It's taken 10 years, but this week employees of Ansett Airlines finally received the payouts they were entitled to. The airline's collapse a decade ago left 15,000 employees out of work and out of pocket. And while some have made a new life, others have never recovered from the fall of the national icon. Here's Heather Hewitt.
It's exactly 10 years since the unthinkable happened for these workers. The airline they knew and loved went into the hands of administrators and would never recover. But this week at a favourite old Ansett watering hole, they gathered to celebrate the memories.
Some of these people I haven't seen for 10 years, so it's excellent. And they all hate getting together, as you can tell.
Ansett was a great organisation, a big family, as you can see here today. Everyone got on well together.
You had fathers working with sons and daughters, mothers working with daughters and sons, husband and wives, brothers and sisters. It was just fantastic.
Did you feel the sense of family continuing even after the airline had collapsed?
There was very, very much a sense of family. To some extent we felt a bit like intruders, but we got on with what we had to do.
I had to go and tell 250 people to pack up and go home because we weren't sure what was going to happen from there. So yeah, it was a day I will never forget.
As the world was still reeling from the September 11 catastrophe in the US, more than 15,000 Ansett workers faced a catastrophe of their own. And in the past 10 years, some have coped much better than others.
Some people just completely, their lives fell apart and they fell apart. Some people who had partners who were also working at Ansett, their finances were just completely went up in smoke. And then there are other people who just made the best of it, who arose from the ashes into different jobs, into careers that they never thought they'd ever take on. So it was a full gamut. There were people too who took their own lives because it all became too much.
Do you think people worried that they would never see what they were owed again?
Absolutely. I did. I can remember coming home that night and saying, well, I'm 62, I've got no superannuation and no job. So it wasn't a great evening.
Mark and we have tried to save Ansett.
From day one of their appointment, the administrators, Mark Corder and Mark Menther, worked away at trying to salvage the airline. When that failed, they tried to get the best price they could for all the assets by avoiding fire sales. It was no easy task.
We've got to remember September 11, come September 11, there were no planes flying in the US. There were very few planes flying around the world, so the whole aviation industry ground to a halt, and then after that it was very, very difficult.
When you took the job on, would you ever have imagined it would take you 10 years to wrap it up?
I would have never imagined it would have been so complex.
It was the first 767 engine that we received into the country, and
to help with the enormous job, the administrators kept on 100 employees like Alan Pickering, who was manager of the engine overhaul division at the time of the Ansett collapse. He started with the airline as a mechanic almost 49 years ago and didn't think twice about the chance to try to repay fellow workers their entitlements.
Just made me feel I was contributing, so worked with so many great Ansett people. If I could give a little bit back, I thought that was a good thing.
We had nearly 10 million spare parts to sell, so it made sense to do it in an orderly manner. Sure, we could have fire saled it, finished in 3 or 4 years, but I think the result speaks for itself.
I think the lessons certainly are that when you've got a loyal staff who'll do anything for the airline, a slow sale is sometimes the best sale.
Over 10 years, they sold off assets large and small, and former Ansett workers would receive regular dividends, often around Christmas time. With each sale, those still on staff knew it meant their time would soon be up.
Just showed how the spirit of the people to actually stay there to do that work, knowing that jobs were going to reduce every time. So yeah, very demanding, but very rewarding that we actually achieved getting money back to people.
By the middle of this year, there was only a handful of them left, including Alan Pickering. The job was almost done.
People complained that it took too long, but very, very difficult. Having been there, I know how difficult it was to move aircraft, to sell facilities, to sell spares.
At the end of last week, the final payments to former staff went out. 10 years on, they'd received 96 cents in the dollar of what they were owed.
We got to 96 cents and we feel a sense of closure.
But it's not quite all over yet. On the most recent figures available, almost 2,000 former Ansett staff have failed to collect $40 million in superannuation being held in a fund.
So that's big dollars, you know, and I think the average account was about $24,000 super. So, you know, it's still out there, people. If you want to get it, it's still there and they can collect it at any time.
But for the administrators and their helpers, the task is completed, apart from final thanks to dedicated staff like Alan Pickering.
We sold the last 2 or 3 million of spare parts and the properties, and they all finished up in the last couple of weeks. So, you know, they've stayed to the end and they did a great job.
He took over from Laurie, then I took over from Max.
In a modest home in Melbourne's west, he now contemplates retirement and life without the airline he served for most of his long career.
All good memories. We still talk to each other and do stay in contact, and they were just fantastic people. Met some of the best people you ever could in Ansett. I'll always feel for Ansett. That was a big part of my life. So yeah, I'll always think about it.
Heather Hewitt reporting.